Hi, everyone. Welcome to How AI is Changing Patient Search and What to Do About It. Today, we're going to discuss the new and different ways patients can find you online, what's going on out there, how is the landscape changing, and how you can remain competitive with a pristine reputation. So thank you so much for joining. My name's Lauren. I am a Senior Solutions Marketing Manager here at rater8. And we have an absolutely amazing special guest with us today. And I'm going to let him introduce himself. Justin,
Yeah,
welcome.
yeah. Thanks. Thank you for having me, Lauren. I always love collaborating with rater8 on all things content. Been a huge advocate of y'all's product, which we'll talk a little bit too, and really excited about this topic. It's actually one of the first times, like from podcast and webinar, addressing what's been the huge elephant in the room that's really changing everybody's lives, much less search and how we handle marketing practices. So I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to tackling a topic that's on the top of everybody's mind.
Yeah, me too, because we've been hearing a lot of buzz. We've been hearing a lot of different things. And I think everyone is trying to kind of take in everything at once and play catch up. And then we get anxious that we're not doing everything we need to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think what we're hoping for today is to just kind of walk through what exactly is going on, what that actually means for um, our clients in particular, medical practices and what you can do. So let's jump in if you're ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So big picture. Um, how has AI changed the way patients search for healthcare providers today compared to just a couple years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be obviously a big center point of the conversation. We're still very much on the front end of this, so I think we're like living it right now, how it's going to change. But it is directly impacted how patients are searching for healthcare providers. I think what we're seeing is if you kind of rewind 5 to 7 years ago, there was a lot of conversation around voice search, like when everybody had like an Amazon Alexa in their house, but it was so in its infancy, it really couldn't do what people thought it would do in terms of changing the landscape, specifically to how patients are searching for providers. Like who was talking to their Alexa and is like, find the best ophthalmologist near me. There's like no visuals attached to it, you know what I mean? But I think we're seeing that impact the last couple of years of search specifically. And what I mean by that is things are a lot more conversational. I think AI has evolved what was keyword stuffing and then keyword structure and all of these ideas around that and how people search for things, again, specifically even to finding a local provider, that now it's much more question driven, it's much more conversational, it's become much more personalized, and with that a lot more interactive, and even what you're seeing in the search results space, no matter what device you're on. And I think that's been the biggest thing, is just it's much more personal and much more conversational than it's ever been. And that I think we as marketers need to take that into consideration in terms of how we're structuring everything, which again will come into play in our conversation today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The honestly being able to just type a straight up question into Google
Exactly.
and keywords is pretty great.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Um, all right. So I feel like we keep hearing this buzzy word. It's in headlines everywhere, where you're looking around at like SEO journals of the new fragmentation of
Mhm.
search.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us of what that actually means and what it means for medical practices specifically?
Yeah. Really what it is what it sounds like is search has become fragmented, and what we mean by that is people aren't searching in one place anymore. I think that's definitely still, even now, taken with a grain of salt. Google search still heavily dominates the market, but I think with both the rise of these AI conversational chatbot options out there, but also even the rise of browsers like DuckDuckGo. But then you hear, I mean, everybody loves to throw stats around. Like I think TikTok is the search engine of choice by Gen Z now, and I mean that's eye-opening. People always talk about YouTube is the second largest search engine and it's owned by Google. You need to optimize everything for video. But I think the reality is AI is giving people a different type of search experience. Even Reddit. I mean, Reddit has become massive, even in what it's doing and changing in terms of landscape of Google search results. much less its platform as a search engine. And so, really, all of that to say is just like in ads and what's happening with Google ads and not being like one note, so to speak, on your focus with a marketing strategy or an SEO strategy, it's becoming more and more true today. Is you got to think about, depending on what you're trying to do in search and who you're trying to get in front of, the answer is not always going to be just Google. And that's, I think, going to continue to change even more and more. You really have to, just like with social media, figure out where your patient audience is and where they're gravitating toward and how you produce content to perform really well on those things that are now driving search or eroding search away from Google.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, sounds to me like it would create an even healthier market for search engines in general.
That I completely agree. I think it's leveling the playing field even more. That's why, like, my first love's always been SEO. It's even how we grew our organization back in the day. Is I didn't come from a background of like starting working for a Fortune 1000 or 1500 company and doing conferences and trade shows. I just dove into search. I felt like I could win search. Like, I understood that was based off of writing incredibly good content. And I think fragmentation of search has allowed a local provider practice to go toe to toe with a health system or a physician directory listing or whatever it is, even more so than it used to. And that's what I tell my clients all the time is search is anybody's game. I mean, obviously, when it comes to something like a mega keyword, that changes. But when you're talking about a local search environment, you can win that game, even over a very large health system in your backyard. And that is going to be even more true as things continue to fragment out and become more and more competitive on all of these different, really untapped um, other channels other than Google.
Yeah, that's exciting. I know we have
It
a lot
is.
of clients here that may be watching that are independent practices that really go up against those big health systems. So it's really, really great to
There's
hear
hope
that.
for everybody. If you're willing to put in the right structures, time, and effort, anybody can play with the big boys, so to speak, and you don't need a multi-million-dollar budget to be able to perform well in search.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's kind of, break down kind of some of the components of this. So first up, Google AI overviews, as they're calling them. Um, what exactly does that mean for Google specifically?
Yeah.
What are they and how are they impacting, um, healthcare providers trying to be found online?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this one too, we may even have a screenshot. We wanted to collect a couple visuals. I think it always helps with visuals to be able to see what we're talking about, or at least a real world example of it. AI overview, most people are probably familiar with it by now over the last couple of months, is exactly that. It's that overview at the top of, I'd say, probably 60 or 70% of searches now. It's not every one, which again, we'll get into why is that. But it's basically AI driven summaries of whatever query or topic that you're looking for. And it's typically broken down in either like a 1 to 2 sentence feedback response or a paragraph, or it's just like this in terms of this search query. It's got an intro paragraph and it's broken down by like sections. And it's really still kind of similar to that like people asked for section where you can expand those topically relevant questions and search results. It's very, very similar to that. So it's kind of consolidating on-site content as well as SERP result resources into one digestible piece of information, depending on what the topic is. Obviously, it can look different in terms of the search result, but that's kind of what it is. And it's definitely changing things, even how far people are willing to go down the page in terms of search results. It's changing a lot of that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, okay. So with that in mind, do you think that, you mentioned like they may have to start scrolling down further to see
Mhm.
maybe the medical practice's website. Do you think that that's going to result in a drop in website traffic for medical practices? And if so, how should they be adapting?
Yeah, great question. I do think everyone's going to be impacted. I think I think that this has been something that was coming for many years, even if it wasn't the term AI or whatever it was going to be. At some point, Google was incentivized to, again, they're in the search experience game. That's what the reputation side of what you guys do. It's also what we do in terms of trying to deliver the best content at a high quality level. And they're doing it on the backs of users, so to speak, in terms of user generated content. But it's all about search experience. And so what AI can do for them is take all of this information, gather it really quickly, and deliver really specific and personalized search results. So they can really cut the middleman, so to speak, and that's the end website, in this case, like a practice website, out. Not all the time, though. So I do think we're going to see a 5 or 10% drop in organic traffic naturally, just because people can get more of the answer they're looking for on the front facing Google search results, whether it's with AI overview or it's with maps, like whatever it is. I think that that's all we've already been seeing that from an industry side of things for a couple of years. But again, I think everybody's experiencing that. I think as search is changing, that's happening to everybody. So I wouldn't be like hugely concerned about that one piece. It's about, again, the front end search experience. What can we control? How do we ensure we're coming up at the top to influence patient behavior to choose our practice, so to speak, at a local level? And those are the things I think that are really important. You're also on top of that, you've got DuckDuckGo, you've got Private Relay on iPhones. Like you have a lot of data loss on top of that that's occurring with direct traffic rising. So yeah, everybody I think is going to see less traffic, and the traffic that they are seeing, there's going to be less we can tell inside of that traffic in terms of where they came from. So there's definitely, from a data standpoint, things are going to be shifting, I think, over the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm sure this is on everybody's mind. Um, do we have any insight into um, how we can, make sure that our website is showing up in that AI overview that they're going to use the
Yeah.
medical practices website? Do we actually know what influences what makes the cut and what doesn't?
We do. I mean, obviously, some of it is very limited. Actually, is kind of straight out of the mouth of Google. Like we get some insights in terms of structure for Google business profiles and that stuff. But we've got so much data, so much track record of experience of what influences it. Even with what we're seeing, like keeping it topically relevant to the AI conversation, like with what we're seeing with AI overview, when it does return in the local search results, what's influencing and impacting that? I think while things are changing and evolving, certainly, I think the good news for the here and now, and what I think is for the foreseeable future, is again, everything is still very much reliant on what we're putting out there into the internet as a representation of the practice. So it's very much still in our control, and very much still goes back to following fundamentals and principles that have been around for several years, even in a changing landscape. And that is, it's about the content and structures of your website. It's about your Google business profile. It's about the reputation on that Google business profile. It's about the other ranking signals around your website, whether it's the providers or it's other search directories, those types of things. It really all comes back to, we've got to make it really easy for Google to figure out who we are, what we do, and have confidence in returning us high in search results, because we've done that work for them in terms of building good reputation, building good content, building good trust and authority with them. And if you do that, you're going to come back in search results high. Whether it's in an AI overview or it's in Google Business map packs or it's in the top 3 search results, that's what you're going to see with confidence if you're still playing by the rules.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you touched on kind of every possible scenario, because right now it's not guaranteed that an AI overview is going to show up. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you
Exactly.
get a local 3-pack, sometimes you get the snippet. It's, so you want to be covered in all of those areas for sure. Okay. So that's Google, that's AI overviews. We've also got these conversational AI chatbots, your chat GPTs, your perplexity AIs. So, how do you see this affecting how patients choose a provider, which is a very broad question.
Yeah.
I know you're
I,
not a psychic, but
I think the jury's still a little out because we're so early on, I think, in this journey. I mean, even doing like even recent research, even like coming into 2025, because of the stranglehold that Google has had over local search for so long, I think it's obvious that they are presenting the most accurate information, the richest AI driven search experience. And I think that that's led in the numbers. I mean, they still own like well over 90% of the lion's share of all AI driven search. Chat GPT has certainly, they're chasing and they're making leaps and bounds in terms of how they're returning information and like conversational AI chatbot search. So I think things will continue to like be fluid and shift as those grow in prominence. Right now, still everything is so dominated and owned by Google. It's kind of hard to say how it's going to change. But I think staying up on it over the coming months, because again, even like GPT and these other platforms are just constantly trying to innovate and keep up with a really, really accelerated changing search experience for people across the board. So I think that's really what we're doing right now is we're paying attention. Like I think Google is still owns so much of the market. That's where the focus lies, but being well aware that as these conversational chat AI bot platforms continue to rise, we're going to need to start paying attention to how we need to potentially change how we're structuring data and content on the site. But again, it all really still is going to come back to fundamentals, like I just described: reviews, reputation, Google Business Profile, and content on your website.
yeah, absolutely. And the chatbots, do you know, do they use Google to search the web? Do they use their own? How are they scouring the web?
That's a good question. Yeah, they're taking in data from a lot of different places, is my understanding. So it's not just Google search results. They're taking in a whole slew of things. Like I've even heard there's been conversation, even I think there's a legal battle going on right now with Meta and its AI side dealing with piracy of a massive, massive database of books, digitized books. And so they're feeding all of this information to not only teach their bots, but also what to return from a search standpoint. So they're really getting this from all angles, even from like the literary written word side of things. And again, they're even having issues of the legality of like piracy content to be able to feed these AI machines to learn more and more and more. So they're getting it from a lot of different places, is my understanding in terms of the research that I've done.
Yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, it is. It
Opening
is.
up such a can of worms. Um,
And
okay.
what's interesting about it too is I feel like they're learning as they're going too, which is obviously why there's a whole conversation around the safety of AI and do we learn the hard way after it's too late type of thing, because we're kind of learning as we're going. And so that's the other side of the coin too, is how to be careful while we're unpacking potentially Pandora's box through this whole entire process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a scary prospect. Can be exciting, can be scary.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, so now that we've kind of learned a little bit more about these AI overviews, the chat GPT, conversational AI, um, with all this going on, you know, I want to really hone in on what healthcare practices need to focus on to stay competitive. So you've mentioned a few things. You've mentioned reviews, you've mentioned structured data, kind of what if you were to distill it down into a few bullet points.
Yeah. I really still think we're leaning into the basics and solid principles from an SEO strategy. And that is, if anybody's ever listened to my content, I say it at nausea. I say it during sales calls, is if you want to rank for it, you need a page for it. And I think that's a really dumbed down way to say it. It comes back to a really solid site map and the content on those conditions and treatment pages or location pages. If you're multi-location, it comes down to, yeah, you need to tell Google, these are the things we do. These are the things we're focused on in terms of like relevancy and ranking, and this is really solid content to feed the beast, so to speak. I think that's a huge one. Google Business Profile again is at this point like a totally no-brainer. Like it drives so much relevancy, proximity, everything to do with local search results. And obviously, one of the biggest things driving that is user-generated content in the form of reviews and reputation. So I think if you're paying attention to the structure of your site, the content on there, and making sure things are your house is in order, and then you're paying close attention to your Google Business Profile and driving growth and reputation, you're really putting yourself in the driver's seat to be really competitive. I think there's other layers like backlink building and continuing to focus on your domain authority, all those things that, again, just give you more oomph in local search results to be able to compete with either older domains or more well-established practices or large health systems. But at the end of the day, the conversation I was having even 2 or 3 years ago in terms of the fundamentals still really hold true now. They're just being presented in a different manner in terms of AI overview.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so, you talked a lot about Google Business information,
Yeah.
um, and user-generated content. So those reviews, how can practices make sure that they're leveraging reviews in the most effective way possible so that obviously we know just collecting the reviews will help you with the Google 3-pack and
Yep.
being higher in organic search, but is that different? Do they need to do something more for the AI overviews or the Chat GPT responses?
I think leveraging structured data is really important. I mean, in terms of integrating it into your site, obviously in specific and relevant places, like if it's provider specific reviews, integrate those on the physician bios. That structured data, those rich snippets, create a richer experience in organic search results too. Again, on the front end, where you can have like a physician's regular search result, but you can also even have the reviews right underneath that. All of that stuff, again, why are we getting reviews? It helps Google understand and put the onus on the user to tell us, does this place do good work? Or in this case, do they provide good patient care? Are they reputable? Are they trustworthy? Are patients engaged and do they like what they're doing? It all comes back to social proof, so to speak, and the weight obviously that carries in search results, but also not only is getting it integrated in your website really important for SEO, but the more visible it is on your website, whether it's because if I do an audit on a website, you've got your brand name and typically physicians' names. That's what's searched most common. Somebody is searching for a physician. You want to make sure that all of these awesome reviews that you built for them are integrated into their page and super visible because that is still driving decision making for patients. So there's so many different ways to leverage reviews that go past just having them on your Google Business Profile. It's something that rater8 does a tremendous job of making it as simple can be. Like you get a code, you get a snippet of code, and you put it on this provider's page, and it aggregates and pulls everything in, so you can see it right there without having to do plugins from WordPress and all of this type of stuff that not only has security vulnerabilities, it can be clunky. And so that it is really important. You got to move past just how do we go from 5 to 50 reviews on Google Business Profile, but where can we put those reviews on our site to get more out of them, as well as improve and enrich our search result experience too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good example of sort of those core principles still having effect and helping now because, like I'm sure many of our clients, like you've helped, I'm sure many clients do this. We worked really hard to make sure that our testimonial widgets and our verified review listings were built on structured data. We wanted to clean that up so that it was as Google friendly as possible, as they say. Um, and these AI overviews, Gemini and like ChatGPT, they all seem to be really craving anything built on that's really structured in the back end. So if you've already done that for your website, you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one of the other slides that we put together was a visual example of just that. It was actually one of the rater8 specific provider pages. But again, it's consolidating is what it does as you're pulling it up is it's taking a query in terms of what somebody is looking for, and it is spitting back out a list. And that list is driven on reputation primarily because that's driving physician directory search results, it's driving map packets, driving all of those things. And you can see that here, even example of the rater8 bio page that's created when somebody's leveraging y'all's platform ranks super high in these search results. And that's why not only is it consolidating all of this data and information and doing the work for Google, so to speak, but it's also got structured data in it and all of these things that are going to make it perform really well in AI overview, or if it's a regular local search result too. And that's why these types of things are so important, and need to be at the top of mind when you're thinking about a local SEO strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, um, looking at kind of, I want to look at kind of how Entropy and rater8 can help. We've kind of already touched on some ways. Um, in general, what specific strategies do you all at Entropy use to help practices sort of strengthen their online reputation and visibility, whether that's AI-driven search results or just in
Yeah.
general?
Yeah, I think for us, and this is why I love working with y'all so much, is we've really stayed in this lane as y'all as you've invested so much into technology to really streamline the workflow in terms of integration and sending out reviews, because that is so hugely important and something that we don't do. So what we really focus on in terms of our lane is strategy and execution around your website, the structures on that website, the content being developed for that website, and also local search principles for especially multi-location groups. Multi-location groups have to approach things differently because they can't go all in on one specific geographical territory. Just it's whatever this treatment page is plus wherever you're at. When you have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 plus locations, that really has to be driven through local search in a different way, through the Google business profile, through location pages, all that stuff. So that's really structure and strategy is what we focus on when it comes to helping clients dominate in local search. But there's 100% two sides of this, so to speak, is off of the site. Google business profiles drive so much visibility and so much traffic. And that lift is done through reputation. And that's why you really need all of this. You can't just have somebody going out and writing blogs if you're a local practice. That's not going to do it for you. You've got to have somebody that's building the house the right way, but you also have to have the reputation arm of this for, again, the slew of reasons that I went through, not so just so you can rank at the top of map pack, but again, even if you go back, like my background came from physician liaison and physician referral development, like so much of that, and even a referral dominated space like oncology is still, reputation plays a huge part in that. When you're on your own intimate patient journey, I think patients are much different than they used to be in terms of they're going to go out and do research, and everybody's heard that. So I think all of these principles are still there, but you got to have those things married. You got to have a good approach to your website. You've also got to have a proactive game plan for your reputation growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, awesome. It's been so amazing talking to you. I'm not done asking you questions yet, but I do want to pivot a little bit. I'm going to ask you a question that's impossible to answer, but just for fun. If you were to predict where a patient search is headed in the next 3 to 5 years, what trends do you think we should be paying attention to, or what do you think is going to happen?
Wow, that's interesting. I think things are just going to become that much more personalized and that much more enriched in the local search experience side, that is again going to continue to impact how we even think of the website, its impact on search and content. I think we've already started seeing that shift to not take away from the value of really good content. There's also a lot of different ways to generate content now without getting into like chat GPT created content versus having a medical writer, without getting into like the weeds on that. I still think fundamentally the way we look at site structures and how it's influencing local search and what's most important to focus on are going to change over the next 3 to 5 years. I also think again, to your point about fragmented search, that's just going to become an even bigger issue where we're going to see, I think, like Reddit becoming a somebody like that becoming another really dominant force in conversational based user generated content based search. And that's obviously going to be bigger in some niches than in others. How much it will impact medical, I think it'll impact it a lot because again, you're talking about the patient journey, your experience with those particular providers, all of that stuff. So I think things are just going to continue to become more conversational, a little bit more personalized than they already are. And with that, we're going to have to begin to change the way that we look at how diversified we need to be in terms of SEO and how we're creating content and making sure it's impactful and of high relevancy with Google and of high quality because they still put a huge emphasis on that.
Yeah, the Reddit piece is so interesting in
It,
particular. It's
it,
all
yeah, it really is. I mean, even Reddit ads, like even conversations that we have through that, like looking at, and we are proactively like introducing those as another mechanism because we're seeing lots of success. I mean, the growth of things like that cannot be ignored, and it's interesting because it really is creating a much more multi-channeled approach to whether it's SEO or it's ads. Things are definitely changing in the world of AI.
yeah, it's gonna be an interesting piece to keep an eye on.
It will.
Um,
Absolutely.
well, thank you so much,
Yes. Thank you for
for
having
joining.
me.
It was so great, and, I'm gonna put your information up here. If anyone watching is needing help, with a reputation management strategy, marketing strategy, here's the info for both rater8 and Intrepy. We're happy to help. Um, but otherwise, I hope this was kind of helped everyone understand a bit more what's going on, breaking down the buzzwords that are being heard everywhere and what you realistically need to do and don't need to do, or don't need to worry about at this moment. So thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for having me.